In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Marianne's guests are leaders in their field, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in their own work. They teach others to develop, refocus, and grow. Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. And remember, make every moment count.
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're going to be spending this time today. We've got quite a show lined up. It's all about business and moving you forward. Whether you have a corporation, a company, or you're an entrepreneur, this is a show for you. So today we're going to be talking with Dov Baron. He's one of Inc. Magazine's top 100 leadership speakers and is noted for his own show, Full Monty Leadership, that talks all about leadership in business. And he's here today to talk to us about his book, Fiercely Loyal. So let's welcome to the show, Dov.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on. And thank you to each of your listeners who are tuning in, and hope you find a ton of value today.
Oh, well, I find tremendous value with all the information you have out there. You've got this great podcast called Full Monty Leadership. You also have your book, Fiercely Loyal. You're highly successful, highly sought after keynote speaker and mentor who teaches on key components of leadership. And so I have to ask you, there's lots of questions I have for you here today. I have to ask you, so you've probably seen it all. So when you have like a business leader that comes to you or a corporation that comes to you and they say, gosh, you know, we're a little bit different. Relationships are so difficult because people are so complicated. Like, what type of advice would you give them?
People are not complicated. People are unique in how they approach anything. We all look through our own context lenses. We see the world in our own way. But what it boils down to about people is exactly what you said, which is relationships. And the question is, if you want to be a great leader, are you committed to being great at relationships? And invariably, most people don't put enough time and energy and effort into that. They're focused on bottom line strategies, but forgetting that your bottom line is delivered by people. So you've got to become a master of relationships. We call them CRO, Chief Relationship Officer. That's got to be your commitment.
Well, and I know in your book, Fiercely Loyal, you talk about creating loyalty within the workplace, which I think a lot of times people look at as a very difficult kind of thing to develop. And you've really broken it down and you made it so simple that any leader, any business manager can pick this up and really start implementing these tools. What are some ways that our listeners can go ahead and start creating loyalty within their workplace?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And because it's a massive problem. We know that 70+% of people are disengaged when they're at work. Furthermore, that 43% of your millennials are going to leave you within the first 30 days. So people are not staying loyal at all. Now, is that because they're a bunch of entitled brats? Well, that's what we'd like to believe, but it's not true. It's just not true at all. What they are is people with a heck of a lot more options. And why wouldn't they take those options? I encourage them to do so. What we've got to do is give them a reason to stick around. And part of the reason to stick around is if you want loyalty, you've got to give loyalty. Well, how do you do that? Think about the friends that you're loyal to. The friends that you have, if you think in your mind right now, put a person on one side that you've known for the same amount of time, let's say 3 years, who is a good acquaintance. And on the other side, you've got somebody who is a trusted, loyal friend, and you've known them for 3 years too. What's the difference between those two people? And the answer is the level of vulnerability you have with both people, how invested you are with each of those people. The person who is your friend knows the dirt on you and you know the dirt on them. You've revealed yourself to them. They've revealed themselves to you. You've been willing to come forward first, not waited for. The acquaintance, you're waiting for something. And this is the thing. If you want to really create loyalty in people, you've got to bond with them. And you can't do that without building relationship first. So that's the first step, is you've got to find out who your people really are more than being an employee.
Well, Gina, and that actually brings me, one of the podcasts that you have done talks about really listening and being more active as a listener, as opposed to just, blurting out things that you think people may be interested in hearing without really listening to what it is that they want. It's a kind of the Cliff Note version on that one, but you said it much more eloquently than that.
But that is it. I mean, invariably, we're listening with the intention to answer rather than the intention to actually hear what's going on for that person. As leaders and managers and et cetera, somebody starts to tell us something and we're thinking, get to the end so I can give you the solution. But here's the thing, that most people are not asking you for a solution. They're actually trying to work it out for themselves. And if you give them the room, they'll do that. But you've got to be a little bit patient and give them the room to actually talk through. Because what you need to understand is there's this illusion that people in business are very rational and logical. And the truth of the matter is human beings are not. Whether they're in business or not, we are actually emotionally driven beings. That's the truth. It's not my opinion. Go do the research. So we've got to let people feel what it is they feel. If you are a person in a primary relationship, a romantic relationship, and your partner comes at you with a problem and you start offering solutions, how well does that work for you? Not so good. You know that. You've had your head bitten off for that because the person said to you, why aren't you just listening to me? That's what we all crave. So give people the room. Don't listen with intent to answer. Listen with intent to hear. Find out what they're really feeling. Then you can deliver what they actually need. Because if you actually ask people, what kind of support do you really need from me? You'll be surprised that it's not what you think.
Well, and to kind of touch on a little bit of what you talked about a little earlier, you brought up the millennials and how people think that they're just like, oh, they're entitled, and there's lots of labels kind of floating around for them on that. Sure. But, the thing that I was real impressed in your book, you talked about how they really look for meaning,
It's the number one thing on their list is they want meaningful work. Millennials want to do meaningful work. They're not willing to just go to work in a job for a paycheck. And God bless them for that. I'm on their cheering squad. I think they rock for that. But here's the thing, and I want everybody who's listening to really pay attention to this. Human beings are meaning-making machines. We're always looking for meaning. But more than meaning, we're looking for purpose. We want purpose. And here's the thing. If you're in business, whether you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or a Fortune 500 CEO, whatever it might be, you have got to know the purpose of your organization. Your purpose is not your mission statement. It's not what you think are your values. It's your purpose. What is this company about beyond the profit? Because here's the thing. Human beings are all looking for purpose. If I'm a millennial, I'm more focused on that. I really want to know my purpose. But if I don't know it, I want to be attached to something that has purpose, because that will bring my purpose forward. So if your purpose is rock solid and I'm a millennial going, I'm not really sure what mine is, but I love this company because of this purpose, I will attach my meaning to it, and it will facilitate my purpose coming forward. So you as a company, as a leader, as an organization, as a manager, must know your own purpose. That is what will endear people to you and make their work meaningful.
Now, when you're dealing with millennials when you're working with corporations and you're dealing with the millennial leadership as opposed to, let's say, the baby boomers or Generation X, what, other than meaning, do you feel like there's any big difference between how you relate from one to the other? Because I guess some of them feel like, they're speaking Greek to each other or Latin or something,
You're absolutely right. It is in many ways a different language, and we have to learn how to speak it going both ways. Very often I'm brought in as kind of the interpreter because at an interview I was asked a long time ago, well, why would millennials listen to you? You're a baby boomer. And why would baby boomers listen to you? Because you're always on the side of the millennials. And the answer is because I'm a baby boomer in age, but in mentality, I'm a millennial, because millennial is an age bracket for sure. People born between 1980 and 2000. Certainly, I'm a bit older than that. But it's also a mindset. And you've got to be able to listen in the lens of the way that they listen. So when a millennial's listening to a boomer, the millennial has to shift their context. When a baby boomer is listening to a millennial, you have to shift their context. And part of building a phenomenal culture with authentic leadership is learning the language of both sides. For instance, if you go to work every day and you wear your suit and your tie, you're probably not a millennial. You might not even be a Gen Xer. You're likely a baby boomer because you think that's the dress code. But millennials don't ever want to show up looking like that. They don't like it. Now, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. The same thing with, for instance, swearing. If you don't swear and you're working with millennials, now I'm not talking about dropping F-bombs, but any kind of swearing, and you don't have that natural sort of flow to your language, it's going to be difficult for millennials to trust you because they're going to feel like you're too proper, like there's something you're hiding. So you'll see millennials in the workforce will swear. Now, there may be need for some moderation around that. However, when a millennial's dealing with a baby boomer, one of the things we challenge them to do is to pull it back a little bit. I swear, and I'm always good with that. It's authentic to who I am, but don't swear to impress. Just if it's part of your language, fine. If it's not part of your language, that's fine. But watch for your own reaction to the swearing, or for the other side, for the lack of it. Understanding that you are coming from a completely different value system, a completely different mental and cultural background. Even though you both might be Americans or Canadians or Brits or whatever it might be, there is a generational culture, and you've got to consider that. And part of it is how you look at competition. That's a vital piece.
Well, and so this kind of brings me to a question that just has evolved from our discussion. So how do baby boomers feel about authentic leadership? Because I know millennials they're all about authenticity. It's really big on them, for working with or companies that include that.
Yeah, I was working with this large organization. As you know, I work with a lot of different companies around the world, and I'm sitting in this boardroom with all the C-suite, and the CEO very bravely leans forward and says, "Can I ask a question?" I said, "Of course." And he says, "How can I be a more authentic leader? I know millennials are that. How can I be a more authentic leader?" And I got to tell you, I cracked up because I said, "Do you know what authentic means?" And he said, "Yeah, real." And I said, "So you're asking me how to be more you?" And he said, "Well, I guess I am." And I said, "That's the problem. As baby boomers, and even Gen Xers, we've been conditioned to be leaders rather than be ourselves. And you've got to be yourself first, then a leader. So how do you be more authentic? Is you have to look at first of all, what is the conditioning? What is all the mess and the clothing that we put on to hide who we are as a human being? And authenticity is really about revealing yourself. You see, as a baby boomer, you've been conditioned, I know I was conditioned, that never to show the chink in your armor, never let people inside, don't let them see anything that's really going on. But the truth is, for a millennial, and even for many Gen Xers, they're not going to trust you until you reveal. And so as a baby boomer, you've learned that vulnerability is your weakness, but for millennials, vulnerability is your power, it is your strength, and it is what will create loyalty. So the one thing you've got to do is reveal yourself. Now, you don't have to go all out. We're not talking about spreading all the dirty laundry out there, but we are talking about doing it with discernment and doing it with reciprocity. So understanding you've got to do it first, and then they will do it, and then you've got to do it again and again, and you've got to build that relationship. As I talked about, your acquaintance, you don't know anything about them. But the people who are loyal to you, you know everything about them. The more you reveal, the greater the loyalty.
And what an interesting place these generations have gone through, because I'm generation, in Generation X, and you mean the boomer, just right on the cusp of the boomer. So, I understand the perspective, but I also am pretty much a millennial at heart as well. So I can understand the perspectives of both and how important that is. But it's such a paradigm shift from one to another. It's quite impressive. So.
It is. And as I said, I love millennials. I think they're awesome. And I think that baby boomers are going to stop bloody complaining about them and recognize that they are the gift to us. They are the gift. In fact, I go so far as to say one of the reasons I love millennials is because they are baby boomers with balls. We see when baby boomers entered the workforce, we said, we're never going to work for the men. We were the hippies, and we're never going to work for the men. Well, guess what? Millennials are saying the same thing. The only difference is that they've created an opportunity to not have to work for the men. They do gig economy. They work online. They're able to work in multiple places. They're able to have autonomy. They have far more courage than we had. And I love them for that because it makes them more innovative, it makes them more creative, and it makes them more free.
Well, and so the next question I have, and gosh, I've got more questions than we have time. That's always how it works, especially with someone as gifted as you. I'm just so excited we're spending this time together. And like in your book, Fiercely Loyal, you discuss that fear of conflict is the root of resentment. And I was like, well, you've got that. You hit the nail on the head with that one. And a lot of times people don't really understand that. So what are some ways that people can overcome their fear and authentically voice themselves without getting into that aggression thing?
This is such a vitally important question. You're absolutely right. People think that the greatest fear is public speaking. We have the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership. We teach people to be speakers. And I've seen people shake like they're going to fall over with fear. But they get over it, and we can get them through it, and they become professional speakers. But trying to get somebody to deal with a conflict, wow, that can be so brutal. Because why? We've learned that conflict is not safe. And the bottom line is, as you brought out right earlier, people don't leave companies. They leave the person above them, the person they have to answer to. They leave the manager. And if you don't set up your environment, your work environment, to make it safe for people to have healthy, keyword, healthy conflict, then you're going to create a ton of resentment, and people are going to become disengaged and potentially actively disengaged, which means they're going to be destructive to your company. So the first thing you've got to do is start to create a productive environment for conflict. And like I said, part of that, the first piece of that is setting up an environment where people are allowed to speak. Because if you give somebody room to just let something out and they don't carry it around, that's the resentment, they're carrying it around. Just having the venue to just let it out very often will just completely disempower it. It's like, okay, I'm good. I just needed to get that off my chest. We've all had that experience with our partners or our children. We're just like, I just need to, okay. And so you go to a friend and you go, I just need to unload. Give me 3 minutes and then I'll be fine. And you're like, okay, good. So that's part of setting up a healthy environment. Of course, there's more structure to it, but that's the first piece. Create a space that allows for it to come out. Don't allow it to be repressed, because that's resentment. It's the number one, not my opinion, research it. It's the number one reason for divorce. Whether the person is divorcing you as a romantic, intimate partner, or whether they're divorcing you as an employer or a leader or a manager. Get rid of the resentment. When you do that, magical things happen.
I think that's great advice for, business relationships. And a lot of times when people look at conflicted relationships, it's like, gosh, I want to say what I want to say, but I'm afraid to. So
Absolutely.
just, following your advice and having the leaders set up that safe space where it's like, I'm not taking it personally. You could say what you need to say and we can move on.
And this is the challenge, is that everybody thinks everything's personal. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I ask people to do is to do this. And I'll ask you right now, Marianne, have you ever walked in a restaurant and for no reason gotten terrible service?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Of course, we've all been through that experience, right? Here's what I do. And people are always like, but I do it, and it's amazing what happens. So I'm getting crappy service from somebody, and so I wait for that person to come back, and I say, excuse me. And they go, yes. Like, you got that attitude, yes. And I say, can I ask you a question? What is it? Did I do something to offend you? And immediately it shocks them. Mm-hmm. And they say, no, why? And I say, I just wanted to know because I feel like, like there's something going on here. And maybe I said something that upset you. And if I did, I'd like to know that, because I'd like to apologize and have us have a fresh start. And then, what happens? The person says to me, usually something like, I'm really sorry, I'm having an off day. I'm sorry, I had a fight with my mom, my sister, my brother, my wife, my husband, whatever it might be. And it starts fresh. Because what you've got to recognize is that most people are carrying crap around that's got nothing to do with you. It's not personal.
Yeah.
It's something else. And if you give them the room to actually tell you that, they will actually want to be better people. Here's the deal. Most people are really good. They're really decent. And if you give them the room to do that, they'll step into that decency.
Well, and in that example too, I mean, the way that you put that makes it easy for them to go, gosh, he's not blaming me. I'm able to go ahead and be open and kind of move forward as far as what's going on here, and let's get beyond this, It's
amazing how people will just open up. I mean, it's phenomenal. I've got people who actually I would put in my friends list that I met that way. Meaning somebody was being an ass to me, and I called them out on it in a compassionate way, and they became friends.
It's like that old quote, that you never know the battle that people are going through. We just really don't. We have no clue. So, for a leader, and especially when we're talking about millennial leaders, how important is it to be courageous in leadership?
It is vital. It is vital. Courage it's no longer an option. It's an absolute necessity. Now, courage has many, many forms, and I want to help everybody listening with this. So I want you to think of something. Do you have whoever's listening right now, I'll ask you, Marianne, because you're right here with me. Do you have a fear of heights?
No.
No. So if I ask you to go stand on top of a ladder at 20 feet, are you going to be okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you ask somebody with a fear of heights to do that, how are they going to feel?
They'll probably do the funky chicken. They probably won't appreciate that.
Now, it's easy for you. So here you are, two ladders side by side, both at 20 feet. You could look over at that person and go, what's your problem? Get over it. Mm-hmm. No. Courage is subjective. You have to get this. Courage is subjective. It takes no courage for me to walk out on a stage and present to many thousands of people. I've been doing it for 30-odd years. I love doing it. But for some people, they would need to wear a diaper to even consider it, let alone do it.
Of course.
I cannot compare my courage to theirs because what's easy for me is hard for another. What's easy for them is hard for me. So always take courage as being subjective. You need to be courageous for yourself in taking, because courage is not the absence of fear. Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. It's the willingness to step into the fear. And all that courage is simply that, the willingness to step in. So here's the question for you. What are you afraid of? It's not what do you need to be courageous about. It's what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of that conversation with your boss? That's courage. Are you afraid of that conversation, a sales conversation, or with an employer, an employee? That's courage. Whatever it is, where the fear comes up. But I promise you, once you do it, you will feel far more empowered. You've got to have the courage of vulnerability, though. This is the most vital. And again, it's subjective. There are things I would tell you, go, oh my God, that's so courageous. It's really not for me. But there are things that you would tell me that I could dismiss and go, that's not very courageous, but it's extremely courageous for you. Courage is a vital necessity, particularly at a personal level in the context of vulnerability.
And, it's interesting on the topic of courage, once you talk to the boss or climb the rock or whatever it is, then it's not this big scary thing anymore. And it's like, gosh, I can do this all the time. I used to be afraid of heights until I went rock climbing, and then they couldn't get me off the mountain, So.
Good for you, girl. That rocks. Now, I, on the other hand, as you know, I think you might know, was a rock climber. I was a free climber and used to climb without ropes. And then I fell from 120 feet and got smashed to pieces. Now I don't do heights. And I'm wobbly watching movies with people at heights.
Yeah. I can understand that. It's a healthy fear to have, healthy.
Certainly in my case, because I was an adrenaline junkie.
I did not know that about you. That's actually pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So that explains a lot because, you're relating a lot of your also personal experience. I could see where this also comes into the work that you do, speaking at these companies and doing the mentoring that you're doing, your podcast. I mean, you're featured everywhere. Can you talk a little bit for those business leaders that we have out there, if they're looking to hire somebody as amazing, as qualified as you to come and speak to their group, the kind of talks that you do?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I speak on a range of subjects. Of course, we speak on loyalty, on fierce loyalty, building a culture of fiercely loyal employees, understanding that you are no longer trying to win customers. I know you think you are, but you're actually trying to win employees. There's a talent war, and the talent won. And so you've got to learn how to create fierce loyalty inside of your people. We also speak about building fierce loyalty with your customers. We speak about authentic leadership and how to develop authentic leadership and build a culture based on that. The focus of our work is around purpose, authentic leadership in a purpose-driven organization, purpose-driven leaders who create fierce loyalty. And we also speak on archetypes and building those archetypes and understanding your deficits in those archetypes of leadership and what are your emotional intelligence, tapping into emotional intelligence to create this amazing loyal culture that brings the best people to you so you can grow your company and grow your bottom line. And as we like to say, we offer concrete leadership soft skills so that you can not only get to the top, but you can stay at the top. And that's what it takes. It's now about the humanities. And the minute we forget that and we think that the bottom line is about a hard thing, it's actually always about a soft thing. And that is the humanity piece. And understanding how to work with your people and get the very best out of them will change absolutely everything. The main problem is, and this is why I'm brought in, that most people are leading like it's 20 years ago. They don't want to admit it, but they are. Listen, every employee who comes to you is interviewing you. You think you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. And if your culture is not rock solid, if your leadership is not rock solid and authentic, you will not keep them past the first 30 days, and it's costing you 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary to hire and train them. So every single one of them is a cost unless you can build that loyalty. That's what I speak on. That's what they're bringing me in for, and I love it.
I can tell, and you're obviously really good at what you do. I mean, there are very few people that can speak across all the generational lines and really make sense of them, especially in a business stance. Dov, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It has been my absolute pleasure and honor. I want to sincerely thank you for having me as a guest. And I really do hope that your listeners and your viewers will take the time to listen to this and pay attention. I mean, you go to all the effort of bringing on great guests, and I really appreciate that. But I want the listener to appreciate that and take notes and pay attention and put it in action. And please let Marianne know that you've gotten something out of it. Write to her, let her know it's important on this side for us as the people providing you to know that we're making a difference. And if you want to find out more about me, please go to fullmontyleadership.com. Easy to find me.
Yeah, and make sure to sign up for Dov's. He's got newsletters, be involved in his community, and of course, follow him on social media. Yeah, you're on all of it. I'm following you there too. We're going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1, 2, 3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. Our next guest is here today to talk to us about her new book, The Future-Proof Workplace. Dr. Linda Sharkey is widely known as one of the world's prominent thought leaders on global leadership. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Linda.
Well, thank you, Marianne. I'm excited to be on Moments with Marianne.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. Now, your book was very informative. I enjoyed it very much. And I have to ask, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first of all, my co-author, myself, Morag Barrett, I do a lot of speaking around the world. We both do. And I have a lot of consultants and clients. Mm-hmm. And I had my own radio show, actually, for a while. I lead the Leadership Connection, where I did many interviews with I used it to do research, actually, to interview top gurus, CEOs, leading authors, and some trends were starting to emerge. Plus, our clients were talking about the speed of change, the tools that they had now just simply were not working anymore in their environment, and they needed something that they frankly didn't know what to do. And through all this research that I was doing and Morag was doing, we discovered that, yes, people are operating with 20th century tools, beliefs, values in a 21st century environment where those rules of the road no longer apply, and or maybe if they do apply, they need to be tweaked, adjusted for the whole new environment. And thirdly, we're in the throes of one of the most significant revolutions going on in the workplace. I mean, we have the agricultural revolution, we have the industrial revolution. We did have the internet in the 20th century, but artificial intelligence is really challenging all the rules of the game. So we need to create new rules, and that's why we wrote the book.
Well, and I think your book is just right on target with all of these topics. And so I wanted to see, how are the changing demographics changing the workplace today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the United States in 1965 was 90% white. Mm-hmm. The United States now is 38% multicolored, and that trend is continuing. And frankly, it's continuing around the world. It's not that the world wasn't diverse before. It was diverse. It's always been diverse. Otherwise, we wouldn't have diverse people living in different places. What's changed now is the fact that people are integrating much more. There are very, very few purely homogeneous societies. Even Japan, which has typically been more homogeneous than others, is finding the need to have more diverse demographics in their workforce because they've got an aging population, as does Europe and other places in the world. Layer that on top of the fact that there are people that are going to be staying in the workplace longer. There are some companies now that have people working for them that are in their 75s and 80s and are continuing to work and continuing to contribute. So there's people coming in, 18 and 20, and there's people staying to 75 and 80. And that trend is going to continue, primarily because people are healthier. People are going to live longer and are living longer. People are better educated, and they want to contribute. Now, they may change jobs a lot. They may have different careers, as both Morag and I have had. I'm on my 5th career at this point, and so is she. And that's the trend of the future. So we need to really look at how diversity and inclusion was a password of the late 20th century. Now it's a must. It's an absolute must to have an inclusive culture where people feel like they belong and can contribute no matter who they are and where they are.
So with the major changes that we've seen, that you've actually seen regarding company culture, what are some of the ones that stand out to you?
Great company cultures?
Yes.
I can tell you, places like Menlo Innovations, great company culture. I believe that they've won some awards. They're a software organization, very flat organization, very much values-driven organization, which is very important. They make decisions based upon their values, not necessarily what's 100% good for the bottom line. They also, by the way, happen to be very profitable. Little Red Wagon. It's a privately held company, but it just won Best Place to Work award again in the Chicago area, and a wonderful company that really, again, is values driven, highly innovative, very creative. LinkedIn is another great example, even though I'm not clear if that's going to stay intact with this being bought by Microsoft. But that's a place where, Reid Hoffman, very forward-looking, visionary leader who developed tours of duty, who understood that it was really all about the people. As a result, it did help the bottom line, no question. But those are great places. I think Google is another example of a place that values people as well as valuing innovation and creativity joined together.
So what are some things that companies can do to get ahead of these changes in culture and diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is be really crystal clear on what your values are. What are they? And in the 20th century, we had a lot of this stuff written on the walls. You could walk in everywhere and, look at Uber, look at United Airlines, look at Wells Fargo. You go into these places and they have placards that say, customer is the most important thing, and, we believe in collaboration, and, clearly their culture is really all about the bottom line. And when that happens, you're going to lose at the end of the day, because people are under a great deal of pressure to deliver, and they will deliver at all costs. And the woman who was head of the Wells Fargo division that was making all that money, the CEO, actually said he knew she was toxic, and she was really abusive to people, and she pushed people to really do those customer accounts. And the CEO knew that, and he kept rewarding her because she was driving up profits. Now, the second you do that, you say that what's more important to you is making money at all costs is greed over really being an exemplar for what you say you want to be to your customers. I mean, United Airlines lost tons of money. Strump lost his job.
And continue to, probably.
Pardon?
And continue to, because they've been some massively bad press, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Uber's another one that didn't pay attention to its culture. And, here's the thing. It just goes to show you how quickly, even in a startup, how quickly a culture can go corrosive in 3/4 years. But what people need to do is be crystal clear on the values and mean them. And they have to actually make it clear not what the values are, but also what the behaviors are that are supportive and that demonstrate those values. And they have to measure it, and they have to go outside the company and see if their customers are experiencing those values in their day-to-day interactions. You know, don't you love it when you pick up the phone and you call somebody and it goes, "You're my most valued customer. Please stay on the line for 15 minutes." And, you know, it's clear you're not the most valued because they're not putting enough people on to answer the phones. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you've got to live what you say. So that's one. The second thing is accept no bad behavior of leaders. If you have toxic leaders, weed them out. Toxic leaders create toxic cultures, and toxic cultures, once they're embedded in your DNA, are very hard and very costly to change. Ask Volkswagen, you know, ask Wells Fargo, some of the other places that we've talked about. And the third thing that you've got to do is you've got to measure your culture. You've got to stay on top of it. You've got to pay attention to it and make sure that it is, in fact, not just what you hope it is, but it is, in fact, in reality, what you want it to be. And if it's not, put in place immediately things to begin to move it back to where it's most effective. Constructive cultures have shown research after research after research that they are the more profitable cultures. They are the more innovative cultures. They're the more the cultures that operate more quickly. And in this environment, you need speed. You can't be slow and bureaucratic.
Yeah. And I've known some very gifted people, senior VPs of, you know, Fortune 100 companies that have actually left due to the stagnant culture that they had. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, people, they want to be where they can be appreciated, which, you know, I want to have you kind of embellish on this. What characteristics do leaders need to have today? What do they have to embody in order to successfully manage going forward?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and we have a whole chapter on this in the book, obviously, because leadership is one of the really critical critical pieces, because leaders drive the culture, leaders help define the purpose, leaders help define the values, you know, leaders build relationships. So in my mind, it all starts with leaders. But in this book, Future-Proof Workplace, we built off of a previous book that I had written in the past called Winning with Transglobal Leadership, where we did a massive piece of research around what were the leadership characteristics of leaders that were successful in a global environment. And there are 5. And those 5 characteristics are absolutely correlated to business results. And the first thing is that they're resilient, they're able to deal with ambiguity, and they're able to really drive purpose. They help create an overarching purpose in an organization that draws people forward. So they make what may appear to be complex and may feel chaotic, they help people see a bigger picture so that they can produce. You know, they act with heart. They really are they are about their people, and they are not about themselves. We all have seen millions of leaders who, you know, walk in and they believe that everybody that works for them is about making them look good. A leader's job today is about helping people achieve what they need to achieve and helping people achieve the purpose of your enterprise, whatever that is. And it's been said for years. I mean, that's not a new concept, by the way. It's just that now that's really where you have to be. This digital revolution is requiring a people revolution, because the same people practices from the 20th century, bureaucratic, industrial environments, are just simply not going to work in this new environment. The other one is they're team builders. And, you know, in the 20th century, we talked a lot about teams, so I'm the boss and I've got my team and, you know, I take care of my team. But I'm, you know, maybe I operate a little bit like a silo, and I don't really like those guys right next door, and my team doesn't really work so well with them anymore, or at all, in fact. And there's a lot of politics going on across groups and cross functions. Leaders today have to be boundaryless. They have to be able to pull pods of people together into groups to work on big, hairy problems, to work together, and the leader's job is to clear away the clutter so that people can act with speed, act with the customer in mind, and innovate and solve big, hairy problems, as I said. So these people may not directly report to the leader, and the leader's got to be comfortable with that. They've got to know how to energize people in that kind of environment. They have to be highly perceptive. They cannot assume that just because they walk in a room, and you may be able to think of a few people who do this, but walk in a room and say, well, I'm the leader and this is what I want done, and walk out and expect that everybody, A, understands, everybody, B, agrees, everybody, C, knows what their part is in it and what they're supposed to do. A leader who is perceptive understands that he needs to, or she needs to help bring people along so that they really understand what's expected of him or her. And the final thing is that they really are crystal clear about their values. These are leaders that, there's no question about ethics at all, but they really live their values every day. They mean them. And, they will adjust their values if they're in another part of the world where somebody demonstrates those values differently than they do. But they never deviate from what they think is important. And by the way, I will add, the research underscores that people all over the world have the same values that they want from work. They want to be respected. They want to be treated fairly. They want an opportunity to learn and grow. They want to be empowered. They want a decent boss. And they want to make money last.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you touched on another topic that I want to cover is, and actually, I've got to tell you, I really liked a quote in your book that talked about values. And it basically said, like, values no longer defines how much money a company makes, but rather how it contributes towards society. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that progressive companies can create a culture that embodies those values?
Yeah, that's just a great question. I just was reading a op-ed piece by Thomas Friedman, and I think it goes into that point very well. The towns across the United States that are in the quote-unquote dystopia that our current president was talking about, there are a number of towns that are, dystopias. And then there is a whole bunch of towns that are doing really well right down the street. And part of the reason is because the businesses, they're engaging across boundaries, business, government, public-private partnerships. They're working together collaboratively. They're really embracing certain bigger picture values like education of their students, education of their workforce. They're bringing back in apprenticeships. They're really looking at ways that they can educate people for the future. It's a whole different model. And, I think that those are examples of where people really engage with the community. Major companies, when I was with GE, and they still do this, by the way, go into, and that's where, but GE's had a little checkered record, so, I wouldn't want to say they're like all glory here. But they go into the community and they engage with the community. They employees work with the community. They do projects with the community. They go in and work with private nonprofits, do training for leaders, all of those kinds of things. And then the really outstanding companies don't do anything in a community that's going to trash it, like some of the things we know from the past. Don't leave the rivers toxic. Don't do things that are going to decimate the people in the town or in the place where they're living. They become part of the fabric, part of the DNA.
Well, and I think that's important. And it comes to my next question where we talk about mission and vision statements and how those have changed. And I'd like for you to expand on that, and also how often should companies really revamp their mission and vision statements?
I've kind of gotten off of mission and vision statements. People always trip up, what's a mission, what's a vision, then we've got goals.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, in a way, a mission statement can be, or a vision statement, really that larger purpose of what it is that you're doing. Why are you in existence in the first place? And it may not, it's not necessarily to make money. And, some companies you actually go in and you will see, Jack Welch's thing was be one or two. That's not particularly compelling. Other companies is, their mission statement is to make $2 billion next year, or $5 billion, or whatever it is. It really is a more difficult thing, I think, to scratch deep down and ask that question. Why? First, why are we in business? And you'll get some trite answers the first time around. And then you get with leaders and you say, why are you really in business? What is this all about? And you get to the core of really what you're trying to contribute to society. Clean water is one example. Renewable energy is another example. Battery cars like Tesla, where the purpose is really to create vehicles that don't trash the earth. And when those things start happening, it really shifts the balance of power around the world. And I think people need to be very clear on that. What is your purpose? Not only what is your purpose as a leader. Is it to get that next job? Is it to get that next promotion? Or is it to leave behind great people? Or is it to help people live their dreams? And what is it? And what is the purpose of your company? And I think it's a much harder answer to come up with than a mission and a vision statement. And my experience has been that most mission and vision statements look like a kitchen sink because people throw all their favorite pet projects in. I've got a very good friend of mine, Margaret Keene, who's the CEO of Synchrony Financial, which you would think, that's a boring financial services institution. One of the biggest online banks. And first thing she did when she became a CEO was spend a lot of time defining the purpose of that organization. And it's very powerful.
It makes such a huge difference when the leaders really pay attention to that and look to see how their messaging is coming across, not only to their employees but to the community and their customers.
Right, absolutely. And I'll tell you, Margaret is a totally authentic leader. And when you walk into Synchrony Financial headquarters, it's so interesting because there are no pictures really of the CEO standing there and espousing the purpose and the goals and the vision. There's pictures all over the place of employees working with customers to solve customer problems, whether it's trying to figure out how to finance a wedding dress or how to finance something big like a house. And that's kind of an amazing thing. And think back, I don't know if you flew United Airlines. When I was living on the West Coast, United is the big airlines for the West Coast, and there was the CEO, Jeff Smizek, who ultimately got fired for I think some ethical breaches or something like that. And you get on the airplane, and I fly a lot, and the first thing you hear is, I'm Jeff Smizek, and I'm CEO of the largest airline company, and our people are blah, 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 blah. And I got to the point where I couldn't stand looking at, listening to the thing. But see, it was all about him.
Yeah.
Not about what they were trying to do and the purpose of why they were in business.
Yeah, I think the look at me, how great I am gets really old really quick.
It sure does. It's boring. Very boring.
Yeah, very boring. Well, and I know with that, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but there have been some major changes in relationships. And so what do companies need to focus on, not just for success today, but for the future?
I think we've got to let go of this notion that, people are going to work with you 4 or 5 years, 6 years. I think we've got to create an environment where people can quickly connect with one another. Work together, get clear on what they have to do together, and bond, and then move forward. And when the project is over, we have to look at each other, both employer and employee, and say, is there another project here that's valuable to us and valuable to you, where you can learn, and we can gain a competitive advantage. And I think that's going to be the model going forward. And people want to work in a place where they have good relationships with others. I think we also have to start looking. I was just in Berlin doing a talk for a global female leaders conference there. Mm-hmm. And there was a woman talking, a CEO of a small company there that does bionic arms, prosthesis for people. And she's really, they open source it, and they've really come up with this incredibly creative things for kids who may have lost a hand or may have had a birth defect or whatever, and so much so that they're cool. And they really work well on sensors, and they do have proprietary stuff in there because, they do have to make money, obviously. But being able to build relationships across boundaries. People that look inward, companies that have looked inward, ultimately die. Countries that look inward ultimately deteriorate. We have to look outward, and we have to make connections across boundaries to share ideas and build relationships so that we can innovate together. And then we also, have to be clear. I don't want to say we're not in business to make money. We absolutely are. People need to make money. They need to live. They need to pay for their families and children and education and all that stuff. But the models are going to be very different.
Yeah, I think the paradigm where people were just focused on the money is, like how you've been saying, is a really kind of old one. And people are looking more also for having where they feel like they're belonging to something bigger and there's something that they can contribute to.
Yeah. And where it's really more exciting. And I'm going to make this plug, and you'll decide what you think about it.
Oh, sure. That's what we're here for anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. In fact, I tweeted about it and put some stuff on LinkedIn, et cetera, about it. It was so interesting being in a room with very high-powered women. And I've spent my career where I've been one or two women at the top of the house, and that's it, mostly in a men's environment. And I'm definitely not trashing men here, and I don't want anybody to think that, because I moved ahead, people helped me, and a lot of men in power, made a lot of opportunity for women. So I'm not saying that, but it was so interesting that the vibe was so much more welcoming. And 60% of the room were PhDs or MDs, hedge fund leaders, from all over the world. And, people were just like, well, hi, how are you? It was just such a different vibe than when you walk into some place with a bunch of alpha males.
Mm-hmm. It makes so much difference. It really does. Well, Dr. Linda, gosh, we could talk on this topic all day. You're such a fountain of information on this. I could see why, major companies have you out dealing with all these issues with them and getting them on the right track. Where can our listeners connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me through my website. It's very simple, lindasharkey.com.
Thank you, Dr. Linda, for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Well, I have to say, Marianne, my moment with you was terrific.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. It was such a joy to have you on the show. What inspiration you are. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to tune in. If you'd like to learn more about Moments with Marianne, please visit momentswithmarianne.com. I look forward to all of your emails and communications and respond to those as quickly as I can. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to tune in again today. And remember, make every moment count.
Join us next time for Moments with Marianne, when host Marianne Pestana brings another inspirational gifted leader to help us grow. Tune in every second Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Moments with Marianne, when the Dream Vision 7 radio network is at 1510 a.m. Boston. Or catch Moments with Marianne every Thursday and Friday at 5 p.m. and 5 a.m. Eastern Time by going to dreamvision7radio.com. To learn how Marianne started her business from the ground up, visit mariannepestana.com. Don't miss this, and remember, make every moment count.